All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Just give it a couple of seconds and then we can get started.
Where did we get this thing for? Come with my computer.
Yep, just a friendly reminder, if you can keep your mics muted, that would be great. All right.
I cannot find myself to change my name.
Sorry, just give me 1 second.
Because we're not in a view where we can see everybody.
I was just able to see everybody by clicking on gallery view. So you might be able to enable gallery view to find yourself.
Great. Sounds good. Okay. Yeah, so let's get started, everyone. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to today's Wellness Wednesday, held in collaboration with Music on Main, titled Between Science, Artistic Practice, and Health, Exploring the Harmony of Music and Social Connection. My name is Lily, and I'm one of the program assistants for the BC Brain Wellness. So, Rikishi, can you go to the next slide?
Yes, sir.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. Before we dive in, I do want to take a moment to acknowledge that the BC Brain Wellness Program at the Javad Moifayan Center for Brain Health resides on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Musqueam peoples. As a settler here, I think it's really crucial to recognize the profound relationships we have with the Indigenous peoples and the land, and to continue to honor and nurture these connections. It is truly a privilege to be able to offer our program on Musqueam land. And as you know, we are on Zoom, so we're probably joined from various locations today. And because of that, I urge each of us to pause and reflect on the land that we inhabit. I will post a link in the chat here so you can take a look. Just give me one moment. And yeah. All right, so yeah, let's dive into introducing our collaboration partners alongside our speakers. So we are super, super grateful to be collaborating with Music on Main. So Music on Main is a Vancouver-based, internationally acclaimed concert presenter and producer. Their mission is to connect people by developing artists and audiences' relationships to music, to each other, and to themselves. Since its founding in 2006 by artistic director David Pay, Music on Main has led the country in presenting locally, nationally, and internationally acclaimed musical programming. Music on Main is dedicated to producing classical, new, and genre blending music in environments that are both casual and stimulating. With the goal of integrating concert music into the lives of its audiences, Music on Main adopts innovative and refreshing formats for concert going that creates social environments and builds community. All right, so our first presenter will be Mikey Jose. So Mikey is a PhD candidate in neuroscience at UBC. His research explores what exactly goes on under the hood of our brains when we listen to rewarding and motivating music. And he continuously strives to bridge the gap between the arts and medicine and health. Mikey is passionate about validating the crucial role that music plays in everyday life and clinical settings too, and has received many opportunities to share this passion as a TEDx speaker, invited panelist, and a presenter at several international conferences. Mikey is also co-founder of the UBC Brain and Music Group. Outside of his academics, Mikey is a composer, songwriter, and also musician, and has actually accumulated over 6 million streams in 176 countries through his solo music projects. His passion for creating music and deep interest in neuroscience intertwine, driving him to understand more fully the incredible holistic power of music. And the next presenter we will have today is Erika Switzer. So we are super excited to have Erika with us today. A little bit about Erika. She's an accomplished collaborative pianist who performs regularly in major concert settings around the world, such as New York's Weill Hall and the Frick Collection and also the Kennedy Center. Her performances have been called precise and lucid, as quoted by New York Times, and also intelligent, refined, and captivating, as quoted by Le Monde. She has won several awards, including Best Pianist prizes at the Robert Schumann, Hugo Wolf, and Wigmore Hall International Song Competitions. Switzer is a co-founder of the organization Sparks and Wiry Rise, which curates opportunities for art song creators, performers, and also scholars through innovative initiatives that capture the stories of diverse communities. She's also assistant professor of music at Bard College and director of collaborative piano studies at the Conservatory, and she also holds a doctorate from the Juilliard School. So for today's event, we will seek to understand how music and neuroscience intersect to explore the profound impact of music on our well-being and social connections. As a pianist, Erika Switzer's work has offered many lessons in compassion, healing, and the joyful connection of mind, body, and spirit. In tandem with Erika's talk today, Mikey Jose will talk about the neuroscience behind music's impact on brain health outcomes, with a focus on the social and emotional impact of music. I would also like to take a moment to thank all of our program donors for supporting the BC Brain Wellness Program. It is because of your generosity, we can continue to offer these accessible educational events and classes. As an entirely donor-funded program, we really rely on your generosity to ensure the continuation and development of our program. Thank you so much for your ongoing support. And a couple of housekeeping notes before we begin. Just a heads up that this event will run till 1:30, so a little bit longer than our usual events. If you have any questions today for our presenters, feel free to type them in the chat box. Erika's questions will be addressed in a Q&A session at the end. Any questions left for Mikey will be followed up via an email, just because Mikey does have to leave a little bit early today. And Julia from Music on Main is also with us today. So if you have any questions about Music on Main, feel free to type them in the chat. If you want to ask your questions privately, totally okay. Just DM me in the chat. And just a friendly reminder that only the presenters and myself will be unmuted for today's session. So please do keep your mics muted. If the Q&A session runs over 1:30, feel free to stick around or log off as you see fit. And just a last reminder, this session is being recorded, so you'll be able to access the recording on our website in about 2 weeks' time. So yeah, without further ado, we will get started, and I will pass on the Zoom mic to Mikey. So the floor is all yours, Mikey. Welcome.
Thank you, Lily. Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here and talk about the power of music. So I'm just going to quickly share my screen for all of you, and we'll get started. Can I just get confirmation that you can see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So again, really happy to be here. My name is Mikey Jose. I'm a PhD candidate in neuroscience, and my research work looks into the intersection of clinical research and music neuroscience. So two things that I'm very passionate about. I look into Parkinson's patients. I work with people with Parkinson's, but today I'm going to be really talking about music as medicine as a whole, to supplement our talks today. And looking at the social and the emotional power of music through a neuroscientific lens. So what really is happening under the hood in our brains when we are engaging with, listening to, and playing music. And the first thing I would like to do, before we get into the science of everything, is to play a short clip of a video. This is from a concert from a band called Coldplay. I'm not sure if anybody is a Coldplay fan in here. But this is from a recent concert, I believe in 2023, in an arena of 62,000 people. see if this works for us. Okay. Let me see if I can get this video to start working, and if not, then I'll just continue on. There we go. Okay. Let me reshare my screen. Okay, let's try that again.
Okay, loco, loco. All right, boy. Here we go. 'Cause you're a sky full of stars. I'm gonna give you my heart. 'Cause you're a sky, oh, you're a sky full of stars. And 'cause you light up my path. I see you, my brother. Hey.
Okay, so I know that some of us might want to watch the rest of that video. Let's some Coldplay fans in here. But the point of this video is to really illustrate the power of music in bringing people together. This one scene shows us about 62,000 people in one arena. They over a few days of these performances, there was a whopping 625,000 people who came to watch a concert together. And it's so nice to see all these little tiny lights are individual people, but then you can zoom in these shots and see individual people dancing and having a good time and smiling and having these really deep emotional experiences to music. And so it's really interesting to think about this idea that music, something that we kind of live with every day, seems to have this power to bring people together and to tap into our emotional states, really deep emotional states, feelings of the chills and euphoria. And so as a musician, outside of academia, I also play music and I create music and have been engaged with musical activities. And through my experiences, I have firsthand been able to see the impact, the social impact, the emotional impact of music in my day-to-day life. And seeing that something that perhaps I could create or something that I'm singing or sharing is something that can impact and reach other people's emotional states, that can change someone's emotional state. And so purely, not even as a scientist, but as a musician, I was just so intrigued growing up with music and asking these questions. Why does this power of music seem so universal? Wherever we go in the world, there's musical practices and different traditions that involve music. And as a scientist now, I was starting to ask questions like, what's happening in our brains to that react and are activated when we listen to music and when we engage with music? So today I'm going to go through some big questions and try to, again, this is going to be a very brief conversation of the neuroscience of music, but hopefully it'll give you a taste of these big, broad questions of the power of music and the purpose that music serves in our lives. So the first of these big questions is, why does the power of music seem universal? The second big question that we'll really lean into today is what's happening in our brains when we engage with music that allows us to feel these deep emotions. For example, feeling the chills. If you are a Coldplay fan, or if you're a Beethoven fan, or if you're a Beyonce fan, different music will evoke different emotions in us. And so what's happening up in our brains that allows us to experience these things? And then finally, we'll touch into a little bit of how can music be leveraged in medicine? This is the big question that I ask in my research and in my thesis research. And this is an idea that Erika will be speaking on a little bit later today in terms of her own anecdotal journey with music and in her own healing journey. So these are the big questions that will kind of formulate our structure for today. Now let's start from the very beginning. Why does this power of music maybe seem universal? And we can go back to literally almost the beginning of time, the beginning of our human existence. And we can see that the earliest forms of music existed about 60,000 years ago. This is called a Neanderthal bone flute, and it's the first evidence that we have of music being created, again, 60,000 years ago. And this really shows us that, some people think that music is something that is adaptational. It's something that we were able to gain an appreciation of through our evolution. Some people think that music may have served to bring people together and aid communication, as well as help with social bonding. This was important for our survival. Other people think that it could be a complete accident that we love music and that we are able to appreciate music. That, it just so happens that parts of our brain that process other things, like let's say language and different patterns, simply just activate when music is played. But regardless of its beginnings, regardless of where we think it stems from, it does seem that music is really ingrained in our human culture. And it does seem to affect people from all over the world in a deeply emotional way that ties into our traditions and ties into our memories. So the really big question here is, how do we know that? How can we validate what is happening in our brains, happening every day when we're listening to music and engaging with music? And how can we use that then to leverage to target certain clinical outcomes or certain functional outcomes for music? So the way that scientists measure how music activates our brain can be through different imaging techniques. So basically, these are different types of pictures that we can take of our brain, pictures and videos of our brain, while we are engaging with a certain activity. In this case, when we're listening to music or when we are engaging with and playing music. So this is, as you can see here, this is an MRI machine. For those of you who have ever had the unlucky pleasure of having an injury before, or actually even going into the Center for Brain Health, the Javad Mafagin Center for Brain Health, for a brain scan, you would have kind of been in this machine lying down here. And this is the machine that we use in our research. So the types of pictures and videos that we can really take from this machine are MRI. So MRI stands for magnetic resonance imaging. And what we're looking here is brain structure. So basically looking at what the brain looks like inside of our skulls. We can also use fMRI, which just adds the functional aspect to MRI. And here we're looking at brain activity. So for instance, I can get a participant to listen to their favorite piece of music and see what is happening in their brain while they're listening to that music. And we can see which regions of the brain are quote unquote lighting up or activating when we're listening to music. And then the final technique that I'll mention a little bit here is PET imaging, or positron emission tomography. Basically, this looks at chemical signaling in the brain. So our brain talks to each other and communicates through chemicals and release of chemicals. Some of these include things that we probably know of, serotonin, as well as dopamine. Dopamine is important for reward processing, and music seems to be rewarding. So we will talk about the release of dopamine during this talk. So let's look at the brain regions that actually light up or activate when we engage with and listen to music. So purely just listening to music, not even playing music or engaging with music in a physical manner, it actually activates a whole bunch of different brain regions at the same time. It activates auditory, emotion, reward, and cognitive or thinking centers of the brain. In this image here, we're seeing an fMRI, so we're seeing a little bit of, the structures of the brain here. And then we're seeing the functional activity here lit up in this kind of yellowish shade here and this reddish shade here. And this scan came from a study looking at adults when they were listening to music. And so this fMRI study shows us that there is increased activation here in the auditory cortex, which is kind of along the lateral side of our cortex. And auditory cortex processes sound information, so that makes sense. But it also really impacts and really lights up this frontal lobe, the frontal lobe of our brains. Now, the frontal lobe is really important for thinking and decision making. It's what we think as human beings makes us quote unquote more evolved compared to other species. So decision making, inhibition, things like controlling certain thoughts that we might think are intrusive. All of that is controlled by our frontal lobe. And it seems like when we listen to music and we're evaluating music, this frontal lobe works with the auditory cortex to kind of evaluate and make decisions about how we feel about the music. Now, when we're talking about chills, again, when you're thinking about from Beethoven to Beyonce to Coldplay, we human beings naturally have a rewarding response to music. And it seems like, there's there are varying levels of responses to music, but sometimes, I don't know if any of you listening here can identify to this, probably can, because you're all here due to the fact that you probably have some interest in music. You sometimes feel the chills. You feel goosebumps when you're listening to music. This is a physiological response to something that's pleasurable and something that is rewarding. And so it turns out that in our brains, when we are listening to music that is rewarding, we see activation in this little tiny structure in our brains called the nucleus accumbens. The nucleus accumbens is a reward center of the brain. In our brains, we have networks of structures that help us to process things that are rewarding, things like food and things like drugs. And it turns out the same regions of the brain light up when we listen to music that is rewarding. In PET studies, again, when we're looking at chemical signaling, we do see that there's increased dopamine release in the same areas. So this reward processing is coupling, we're seeing evidence for not just activation, but also release of the chemical or of this chemical or neurotransmitter of dopamine that really is involved in how we process different rewards. So this is really exciting. This is something that's been shown over, just within the last decade of research. And this is something that solidifies our understanding of why music is so rewarding in the first place. Now, as we talked about, music impacts our emotions and it also impacts our memory. So in this study, what they were doing for these participants was these participants for this fMRI study were listening to music that either elicited some kind of joyful experience or joyful music versus fearful music, things that were very strong in terms of their emotional content. And compared to kind of neutral music or something that might be more similar to elevator music, something that was joyful and fearful seemed to activate two main regions of the brain. First one is the amygdala. The amygdala is this small almond-shaped structure in our brains that activate when we are feeling heavy emotions. And this is something that's involved in processing these really strong emotions, including fear, but also immense joy. There's also another region called the hippocampus that seems to be activated here. The hippocampus is important for processing memories. So all of our conscious memories, from remembering what we did 20 years ago at our prom or 30 years ago to what we ate for lunch yesterday, the hippocampus is a very important region of the brain that helps us process that information. So it seems like when we're listening to music, the hippocampus and the amygdala are inherently linked to our musical experiences. When we listen to music, emotional states as well as our memories seem to be active and seem to be functioning while we are listening to music. Now, again, this is just a teaser. These are just a couple of handpicked studies that have shown activation in different areas. When we're actually playing music, we're just talking about listening right now, but when we're actually engaging within playing music, it activates even more parts of the brain. We can talk about the motor cortex, which helps us to actually coordinate movements, voluntary movements. There's increased activation in these frontal lobe areas, especially when we are looking at people who are creating music. There's one study that I didn't show here where they actually looked at the brain of the famous artist and musician Sting. So they put him in a fMRI, they put him in an MRI scanner and looked at what was happening in his brain when he was creating a piece of music. And it seems like all these other parts of the brain that are required for creativity are lighting up as well. So again, I won't go through all of this list, but the cerebellum is something that's really prominent and something that is kind of more primitive in our brain structures. That's really helpful for coordinating involuntary movements. This is really something that also activates when we listen to music. Something that I'll just quickly touch on that we could have a whole other conversation about is neuroplasticity. It seems that when we are playing music and engaging with music, there are regions of the brain that and the connections between the brain that seem to be more neuroplastic. And what that means, it's neuroplasticity is our brain's natural ability to kind of rewire and create new connections within our brains. And it seems like when we engage with music, this neuroplasticity seems to really be active. And this might be something that later on today, Erika might touch on a little bit in terms of her own healing journey when it comes to music. Now, I would like to play a little bit of this video because this really hammers down the point again. Science aside, what are we seeing in the reactions of people? How is music actually being used as a tool to heal? Now, this is a clip from one of my favorite documentaries of all time called Alive Inside. It's something that you can watch on YouTube on your own time. It's free, I believe. And this particular clip shows a video of a man who has Alzheimer's disease. Can't even remember his own children's names. But when he listens to music and engages with music, it seems to light up some kind of part inside of him that seemed to have gone away over his illness. So hopefully we'll be able to see a little bit of this.
How long has he been in the nursing home? Approximately 10 years. He was having seizures, and my mother couldn't handle him at home. Of course, it affected me greatly because he was always, fun-loving, singing, every occasion he would come out with a song, no matter where he was. I remember as a child, he used to walk us down the street, me and my brother, and he would stop and do Singing in the Rain. He would have us jumping and swinging around poles. He was, he was good. He was all...
Yeah.
Henry.
Yes, sir.
I found your music. You want your music now?
What do you want me?
Let's try your music, okay? And then you tell me if it's too loud or not.
Then he is given an iPod containing, we know, his favorite music. And immediately he lights up. His face assumes expression, his eyes open wide. He starts to sing and to rock and to move his arms, and he's being animated by the music.
So again, this is a really nice and inspiring clip that I would strongly encourage a lot of you to look up afterwards. It's called, again, Alive Inside, a documentary that's available on YouTube. And this also features one of the late and great Dr. Oliver Sacks, who was a neuroscientist who really saw this power of music in medicine and in clinical spaces. So as we could see, even in that short clip, that music is transformative. If it's especially when it's something that is deeply intertwined with our emotional states and our memories, that it can even impact the minds and brains that have been worn down by degeneration over years and years. And some of that life can come back again. And that's what's really powerful about music. Now, to quickly kind of go over the research that I'm starting to pursue right now within this realm, is that music does seem to, in a lot of clinical trials, help reduce other things like apathy or a lack of motivation. And that's been shown in people also with Alzheimer's disease, as well as healthy older adults. So creating music, as well as just passively listening to music, seems to alleviate things like apathy and could lead to better quality of life for participants. And so what our research aims to do is we're trying to see the mechanisms or what is happening in the brains of people with Parkinson's disease. Parkinson's disease is another degenerative disorder or neurodegenerative disorder. So the brain withering away in different parts. And so it seems like this is a good kind of population to see if music can reduce apathy, given that about 1 in 4 people with Parkinson's disease, even in early stages, have apathy. And so what we do is we put our participants in these scanners that we've been talking about, and MRI scanners, and we play the music, and then we basically see what's happening in their brains when they're listening to this music. And so we're seeing music kind of as a functional tool now, rather than something that's, you know, just pleasurable or something that's fun to have and that's fun to surround ourselves with. It can be used as a functional tool for healing. Now, the study is ongoing, and I wish I could show you and share with you all the results that are coming in, but maybe in a year's time, we'll share those results that will be more significant at that time. Anecdotally, though, even a participant that came in last week, we play very short excerpts of music in the scanner because we can't play the full-length songs. That would take too much time. But even within a 15-second excerpt, one of our participants who had a connection to the Beatles song Yesterday, which is one of my favorite songs of all time, they immediately, within 15 seconds, started crying. And they had an emotional impact to the song that they had some kind of memory attached to it. So there are even little anecdotal moments in our study where we do see humanity and music and the impact of music come together. And what we hope to do is extend that to actually see the impact of that in research and seeing which parts of the brain are impacted in these things. And if we can leverage music then to understand what's happening in the brain, to then try to target those treatments for particular people. And so just to really quickly wrap up here, and to transition into Erika's talk today, which will be very, very inspiring for all of you here, is to really hammer down these points that music is powerful. It's not just powerful in the sense of aesthetic pleasure, but it's something that can actually be tangibly measured and something that can be seen in our populations. It's universal, it's emotional, it's inherently emotional, and it lights up almost every aspect or part of our brain, and it can be used to heal. It has been used to heal for, again, centuries, and now we're getting, because of research techniques, we're gaining this deeper appreciation and understanding of how this is all happening. We're kind of catching up to the effects of music and trying just to understand it. And it's really exciting time for us to try to understand it so that we can really push for the use of music and the arts in spaces, in clinical spaces, in the medical spaces that aren't historically known for, promoting lifestyle interventions and things that we can do that are non-invasive, things that don't require surgery or things that don't require some kind of drug treatment. So this is a really exciting time to be in this realm, and all of you who are interested in this is a great time to like lean into these things and be interested in them. And I'm very happy to now transition and pass the microphone to Erika, who will talk about their own experiences with music and healing, and really excited to hear about that. So thanks for having me, and that is the power of music in a neuroscientific lens.
Right. Thank you so much, Mikey, for such an insightful presentation on exactly what's going on in our brains and how it can help our well-being. So I know, Mikey, you have to leave, so I'll let you go, but thank you again so much for joining us. Now we will move on to Erika's presentation.
Hi there. Thank you, Lily. Thank you so much also to Mikey for the really informative talk. I made some notes. I'm a little nervous, can you tell? I made some notes about my cerebellum and its relationship to rhythm and pulse, and that's fascinating. I'm gonna do some reading about that. It's good to be here today. This invitation to talk has led to some surprising discoveries for me, and so I'm grateful to share some really fresh insights. But I want to start off by telling you a little bit about what I do, the music that means the most to me, about the importance that collaboration plays in my professional life, but also just in terms of how I experience life. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about my own health journey, and then some lessons that I've taken away from it. And interspersed in some of these topics will be some videos that were produced by Music on Main. And so we'll have links in the chat for you also if you want to watch those videos later on your own time. Video formats are not always the best and easiest access through Zoom shares, but we will do our best so that you can hear some of that today. So I'd just like to start by saying I've been playing piano my whole life. I started when I was 4 years old, and I made my way through all of the Royal Conservatory exams and Kiwanis festivals. And late in high school, despite not really being sure I wanted to be a musician, I did end up going to UBC and I studied music there. I did my bachelor's degree and my master's degree in solo piano. My hesitation wasn't about the music. My hesitation was that being a solo pianist meant a lot of time in practice rooms by myself. And I found that experience pretty lonely and kind of difficult. So I didn't feel drawn into that experience. But it was 2 years into my undergraduate degree when it became a requirement for me to play for singers that that something changed for me. So the experience as a pianist, it really ignited a passion. And it eventually led to advanced studies that I continued in Germany and then in New York City. And it is that same passion that carries me through my teaching work now at Bard College, where I've been on the faculty since 2010. In addition to teaching pianists and singers in the art of collaboration and artistic communication, I also perform concerts internationally, and I co-direct a successful arts organization called Sparks and Wiry Cries. Sparks creates opportunities for the continuance of art song. And art song is a kind of niche within classical music. It's totally my jam. This is my favorite music. And I want to give you a little bit of context about what that music is. Art song is an interdisciplinary chamber form that intertwines poetry and music in close collaboration between singer and pianist. So it's a team sport. You have the music from the composer, you have the poetry from the poet, you have the singer, and you have the pianist. And as a team of four, you're working through how to tell a story. The origin of the form is typically traced to late 18th century Germany, and Beethoven and Schubert are its first celebrated composers. Art song is a form that continues to flourish and expand, and it's increasing in visibility. It communicates the details of the human experience through music. In its original context, art song was for the home. So at that time in Germany, pianos were a new thing, the new technology that people brought into their homes. And print music was also a new technology that people could purchase and bring into their homes, and then read that music with their friends, and they could have a drink, and they could have something to eat, they could talk politics, they could read poetry, and they could share music. And so that sense of community is at the foundation of the form itself. It's a more intimate form than opera, though it's typically sung by similar voices. And it's also more specific than other chamber music forms due to its storytelling capacity. The singer's role is to embody and convey the poet's words with honesty and depth, and the pianist provides harmony, rhythm, and then with those tools can establish context and subtext, the thoughts behind the words. It's a dialogue. It's a dialogue. Both artists bring their individual skills and weave together a telling of the composer's representation of the poet's imagination. Art song's intimacy and nuance and humanity really appeal to my senses. Its emotional and coloristic landscapes mirror my own worldview. That intrinsic sense of partnership in the form fosters community and expresses the underlying purpose of song. And song, its purpose is to connect with others and the world around us. Art song means also that I always get to share the practice room. So I grew up in Vancouver, and I attended Carousel Elementary and Point Grey High School. And After those 2 degrees at UBC, I moved to Munich and I continued my collaborative studies there. I was there for 7 years, and then I moved to New York City and I spent 5 years at Juilliard as a doctoral student. And now I live in the Hudson Valley, north of New York City, and it's been my home since 2013. Each of these beautiful locations has provided me with a connection to land. I was raised near the majestic forests of the Musqueam territory, and I am currently speaking to you from my home in Rhinebeck, New York, which is on the ancestral homelands of the Munsee and Mahicanuk peoples. Last week, I actually spent time with a colleague from Victoria, Rebecca Haas, and her land-based practices brought me into a deeper connection with our local landscape. We have the Catskill Mountains here. We have a broad part of the Hudson River, and it's fall. So we have these technicolor peak fall foliage colors in the distance. And land matters to music a lot. Land it features prominently in musical storytelling. And it features prominently in the music that I'll share today. When I recreate poetry in music, in partnership with singers, I am actively reanimating human experiences of love, of loss, over the course of centuries, as these stories are reflected in the lands and place of the people who write the stories. It's really an incredibly magical way to time travel. Music on Main recorded some incredible videos in the summer of 2020 when we couldn't gather in person. And 2 of those videos feature the work that I do with Tyler Duncan. Tyler is my partner. I practiced this because I knew I would get emotional. Tyler is my partner in life. He's my husband. He's also one of my musical partners on the stage. And we were able to travel all the way across the continent to make these videos. And I just want to comment first on, when you see them, you'll see the green of the land on Musqueam land, right? You'll see these big tall trees in the background right outside of UBC's Chan Center. And I think it couldn't have been a more beautiful space for the music that we're about to share. Because Beethoven, who was indigenous, of course, to Germany, had a relationship with his landscape. And his friend, the poet, Yaidelis, who was a doctor, actually, a doctor and a poet, he wrote these words that reflect that land and the relationship that the poet had to the land as he speaks about the love that he is distanced from. So in this first excerpt, it is the first song of Beethoven's An die ferne Geliebte, which translated is To the Distant Beloved. And I will give you just a short summary of the text. I sit on the hill gazing into the misty landscape towards the distant meadows where I first found you, my love. Mountains and valleys separate us, our happiness and our pain. Will nothing ever reach you again? Will nothing be love's messenger? I shall sing songs that speak to you of my distress. For sounds of singing give flight to space and time. And a loving heart will receive what a loving heart has offered. Thank you, Julia, for helping me with the video clips. So when I first started working with singers, I learned that I had a natural instinct for listening and for timing. I've long attributed this to the large amount of vocal music that I listened to when I was growing up, from my mom's fitness class tapes and my dad's renditions of John Denver, to my brother's Much Music phase and my love for Cat Stevens and the Indigo Girls, Ani DeFranco, Emmylou Harris. Singing was everywhere, and it was a language that I related to and understood. There are a few things that it has always offered me, worlds that I respond to. And one is that it brought me comfort. What I loved most about my first partnerships with singers was how my comfort at the piano increased in their presence. There was something in collaboration that released my self-conscious tendencies and allowed me to enter a state of musical flow. Specifically, I found focus in attributing musical representation in the piano to specific images. So when you play solo piano, you might have all kinds of associative thoughts about what that music might be about, but you have no proof. So when there's poetry there, then the piano can be trills of birdsong, arpeggios of a rolling river, crashing chords of alarm and fear, and the warm, warm resonance of love. And this all made sense to my instincts, and it carried me over the threshold of technique into a whole world of imagination. Collaboration has also offered me breath. Breathing is something that singers must do. Breathing is the basis of their musical shaping and the basis of their musical expression. In the presence of singers and in learning to shape with them and their breath, I also learned to breathe. Learned to breathe at the piano. I learned to notice when I wasn't breathing at the piano. And I learned to sense expressive energy, to sense mood, to anticipate color shifts and rhythmic transitions, to enable space and to encourage freedom, all from the piano bench. Now, all of these skills, they require really deep listening. And when I say deep listening, what am I listening for? I'm listening to the vibration of the voice, the speed at which the sound is traveling. Because in that speed, in that vibration, there's information about how much breath is left in a human's body. And so I can calculate when might they run out, and I can help them arrive at their goal just when they want to. These skills also require the ability to respond in corresponding gestures. So if I hear an instinct, not only if I hear a vibration that's leading me in a certain direction, I'm calculating in two ways. I'm following that sound, and I'm also thinking, what does my part ask of me now, and how do I fit that together with their gesture? It's a dance. It's reading and anticipating movement in real time. Of course, there's choreography, and there's preparation, and there's discussion and choices, and we make notes in our scores about our plans, but there's also the wild card of performance, where anything can happen. All we ever know for sure is that something unexpected will happen, and we will have to improvise. I love that space. Another gift from collaboration has been sound. You know, in piano lessons, master classes, practice rooms, at various times and places in my career, I have learned about manipulating the sound of the piano, how to brighten and darken its resonance, how to articulate rough and smooth textures, how to communicate pulse while remaining flexible, how to create time for breath and text. It transformed my understanding of what the piano can do and how I could maximize its potential for expression. Collaboration has taught me compassion. I've learned compassion for the challenges of singing, the many languages that must be sung, the many styles, and then the raw power and the fragility at the same time of the human voice. I learned I could lean in to support my partners in musical choices. I also learned what not to do, how not to add challenge to the choreography of collaboration. I always think of one particular teacher named Rudolf Janssen with his great, great long arms. He has the longest arms and fantastically warm humor. And he had long lists of how not to kill a singer. And they were numbered. For example, number 38, don't speed up while they breathe. And so he would command us with these lessons in humor and gentle nudging towards how to be a team player. And finally, synchronous timing. And I wrote down cerebellum because I think there's something in my cerebellum maybe going on in synchronous timing. But of course, to be in close collaboration is to build and sustain trust. That synchronicity, that lining up of one system to another system and finding a kind of team trajectory. It's true listening that is occurring there. It's happening in both directions. And when it's working, it feels effortless and joyful. Like birds flying in formation. Such partnership is soothing to the nervous system. It slows my heart rate. It cools my body temperature. And it allows me to notice details as they are created, as I create them, as my partner creates them. It's that state of flow that first got me hooked and keeps bringing me back. These next two songs from Beethoven's An die Ferngeliebte are the third and fourth from the interior of the cycle. Beethoven's construction is highly unusual. Most song cycles are constructed such that discrete songs interrelate in story and musical elements, but they're separated by silence. But Beethoven innovated a structure of continuous music. Between each song is a musical transition in the piano. This feels great from a pianistic perspective. It means it also places a meaningful responsibility of expression and purpose for the pianist. It allows the pianist to have an independent voice. So in this excerpt, you can hear a merrily burbling brook, gentle breeze, cheerful flying birds as they carry messages. Here's a very condensed version of the two poems. Light clouds in the sky and narrow little brook below. If you catch sight of my love, greet her 1,000 times. Pour out my torment, soft west winds, waft my sighs to her. These clouds above, the cheerful flight of birds you will see, dear one, this little brook rushes eagerly to you from the hills. If she is reflected in you, please flow directly back to me.
Mich zögst nicht von hier, könnt ich Traute bei dir ewiglich sein. Ewiglich sein. Leite Segle in den Höhen und du Bächlein klein und schmal, könnt mein Liebchen ihr erspähen, grüßt sie mir viel tausendmal. Seht ihr Wolken sie dann gehen, singend in dem stillen Tal, lasst mein Bild vor ihr entstehen, in den luftigen Himmelssaal. Wird sie an den Büschen stehen, den herbstlich fahl und kahl, klagt ihr, wie mir ist geschehen, klagt ihr, Vöglein, meine Qual. Stille Weste bringt im Wehen hin zu meiner Herzenswahl, meine Säute, sie vergehen wie die Sonne letzter Strahl. Flüst mir zu, mein liebes Flehen, lass sie Bächlein klein und schmal, treu in deinen Wogen sehen, meine Tränen ohne Zahl, ohne Zahl. Diese Wolken in den Höhen, diese Vöglein munter Tod werden dich, o Huldin, sehen. Nehmt mich mit im leichten Flug. Diese Weste werden schweben, scherzen dir um Wang und Brust, in den seinen Locken wühlen. Teilt ich mit euch diese Lust. Zu dir von jenem Hügel emsig dieses Bächlein eilt, wird ihr Bild sich in dir spiegeln. Fließ zurück, dann unverweilt, fließ zurück, dann unverweilt, ja unverweilt. Es kehret der Mai und es blühet die Au.
Thank you so much, Julia. So when Music on Main reached out about this opportunity to share my story, I happened to be reading Siddhartha Mukherjee's The Song of the Cell, doing that thing where people show a book on the screen. Here you go. And it's fantastic. If you want to enter into the luminous internal world of cellular biology, this is your book. I really recommend it. I was reading it, and at page 285, something jumped out at me. It related to glial cells and neural pathway pruning, and Mukherjee described in his poetic way the constant gardening of our neural systems, that through paring back of overactive synaptic functions, improvements are made in the overfunction inherent to early life. So this jumped out at me because it mirrored language that I had heard when I was a teenager. Actually, I was 20. And it was at a time when I was diagnosed with generalized seizure disorder. As I began to connect my experience of epilepsy to this talk, I realized that I had so many unanswered questions from that time. So I texted my mom, and she reminded me that symptoms began in 1988. I was in the first year of high school, and I was a keen saxophone playing member of the school band, and we rehearsed a couple of days a week before school at 7:30 a.m., I think, but honestly, it may as well have been 5 a.m. I had such a hard time getting up in the morning. I never would have made it if my parents hadn't driven me to school. But I have to say, there was something uncomfortable behind the trouble I had with waking up. It felt ominous, honestly. It felt ominous and uneven in my body. I felt shaky, like I do right now. Felt shaky and anxious and short of breath and afraid, and I didn't know why. And you know, high school's complicated, and I didn't have the easiest time socially. So when I started dropping my hairbrush, dropping my cereal bowl, smearing mascara all over my face, struggling to get my clothes on in the morning, you know, being careful on stairs, going down the stairs so that I wouldn't fall and hurt myself. All of those things, I just didn't understand at the time what was going on. So I just figured life is uncomfortable. Life is uncomfortable and scary, and it makes me shake. I didn't have the understanding that something was going wrong in my body. So it went on like this throughout all of high school and into my first years of university. Eventually, I had a couple of full-blown seizures where I found myself on the floor with a swollen tongue. or where my bike suddenly went out from under me and I was lying in the dirt. And I finally went to the doctor. So 7 years after the symptoms began, he said, it's generalized seizure disorder, take these meds. And the medication controlled the seizures. It also thinned my hair. And until one day in 2000, so this is 12 years after the first symptoms. And it happened to be the very day of my first professional gig. I had a recording, a performance with Tyler for CBC Radio 2 in their beautiful old subterranean studio in downtown Vancouver. And I woke up that morning and had the unmistakable feeling of release and quiet. Like poof, it was just gone. And I thought, oh, good, fantastic, terrific. And I took myself off the medication and I never went back to the neurologist. Kids, don't do this at home. Okay, I'm not recommending this as something that anyone should ever do, but that's what I did. And just like that, stopped taking the valproic acid. And what I understood, what I perceived of this moment was a confirmation of my path towards collaborative performance. The day meant a lot to my body somehow, I figured, and it was a sign, it was a good omen. And maybe it was, maybe it really, really was. I experienced a handful of jet laggy, shaky mornings in the years following when I was flying back and forth a lot between Vancouver and Munich. But essentially since 2002, I've been free of any myoclonic jerks. That's the form the seizure took. And those myoclonic jerks that rattled my brain and rattled my body, my arms specifically, for the better part of 15 years, came to an end. So as I was considering my point of entry for today, I Googled myoclonic and epilepsy for the very first time. Remember that this all happened in the previous century. So at that point, I couldn't look it up online. And almost immediately, I found what definitely would have been my diagnosis had I been actually diagnosed as a young person when the symptoms started, which was juvenile myoclonic epilepsy. And as I read a description of exactly the things that I had experienced, the words shock-like and irregular movements of both arms, sometimes the movements happen only in the fingers, making the person look clumsy or prone to dropping things. And I seeing those words in print made an immediate connection in my mind and body. I felt the echo of the tight muscular retraction of myoclonic jerks, the echo of frustration at my clumsiness, the echo of the visceral, anxious, and dysregulated nervous system that I inhabited all those years, and how it was actually still present in my body. Honestly, what I felt I got clarity on was that anxiety is not a product of my thoughts. Anxiety is something that happens physiologically in the body. And that gave me a lot of freedom to understand, to have compassion towards my reality. So it started to dawn on me that I had a stored trauma pattern, that precisely the pathways that I use every day to express music also carry a history of fear and grief. It confirmed something I have felt on the inside for a very long time and hadn't yet been able to articulate. The revelation also connected immediately to the path I have walked with my piano technique. You can imagine that retractive arm movements and playing the piano, those two things go in opposite directions. So when I arrived at the Juilliard School in 2007 to begin my doctoral studies, both of my teachers, Margot Garrett and Jonathan Feldman, immediately addressed the excessive tension I was carrying in my hands, in my arms, in my shoulders. And at the age of 32, after winning international awards, I was suddenly playing one note at a time, trying to learn how to release my fingers into the keyboard. I mean, to be clear, I had made do. You can figure out how to do anything with a lot of tension and a lot of focus. I was really good at it, but I was hurting myself. So now I'm playing one note at a time and I feel like Bambi, uncoordinated and terribly vulnerable. I cried in every single lesson. The more muscle tension I released, the more I cried. Jonathan, who has the best sense of humor, kept a box of tissues with my name on it in his cupboard. And he helped me to laugh through every single tear. So thank you to Jonathan. I didn't realize it at the time. In fact, it really, truly only clicked a couple of weeks ago that those lessons were healing my neurological history, and they were building new and safe pathways for my mind and for my arms. It's what Mikey called at the beginning neuroplasticity. And then in turn, I started to sense how my years of collaborative listening and co-phrasing with partners has also been gently transforming tension, bit by bit, persistently changing my physiology and establishing trust in the place of fear. In this next song, Night Music, Jan Zwicky's poem suggests to me the search for clarity in darkness and the grief of the shadows we carry. Canadian composer Jeffrey Ryan brought Jan's deeply musical poetry to our attention, to me and to Tyler, in 2019. And Jeff set four poems to music, and we premiered them in this video in 2020. I find Jeff's music hypnotic, kaleidoscopic, and richly evocative.
You remember it. You remember it as winter, but what you see are leaf shadows. Leaf shadows on the cupboard door. Black in the moonlight, shifting a little. Shifting a little in some breeze. Then kitchen, moon shadows, of the lilac on the cupboard door, gathered with you. Gathered with you on the threshold. You are only trying to say. You are only trying to say what you see in the world. Spring, winter, even knowing what you love, even knowing what you love their heart shapes, trembling in the moonlight, sharp as frost.
So in closing, I want to share some reflections on the gifts that I've gained through music making. In the past couple of weeks, I've spoken with pianists enrolled with me here at Bard College in the Collaborative Piano Fellowship about anxiety and musical practice. They offered their own practices of rituals and mindset to counter the pressures they experience as they approach the stage. And they helped me to reflect on the relationship between rituals and mindset and medicine, the ordinary medicines that heal us within our daily lives. Rituals. So in recent years, especially in the wake of the pandemic, I've invested a great deal in learning to care for myself. And through that, I've gained greater self-awareness. I acknowledge that I know very little about the science involved in my healing, but I also know that I have benefited immensely from meditation practices, daily piano routines, exercise, improved nutrition, and intentional connection with family and friends. One of my recent life improvements was to return to practicing scales and arpeggios on a daily basis. I took a 30-year hiatus from that. I also don't recommend that for pianists. Let me tell you, the first weeks of returning to scales was a little embarrassing for me, but I have persevered and discovered that playing scales daily is an excellent barometer for my well-being. Scales reflect whether I'm tired, unfocused, underfed, or joyful, energized, connected. They reflect back to me how I will care for myself each day. And it feels honestly like a miracle to have that information literally at my fingertips. In terms of mindset, noticing how my life is filled with opportunities to continue healing brings immense gratitude. I exercise regularly to continue the education and maintenance of the musculature that sustains my musical practice. I sit more comfortably on the piano bench than I ever have, knowing that my body is strong enough to hold itself steady and ready. Opportunities to face outdated fears are now popping up all over the place. This is one of them. Maybe those opportunities were always there, but it feels like now that I'm inviting change, these opportunities are shouting for my attention. They're ready to be conquered. Further gratitude comes through ongoing partnerships that evolve alongside my personal evolution. Tyler and I have walked mountains and valleys, and is changing both of our lives for the better as individuals and as partners. All of my other partnerships are proof of the same benefit and exhibit improved communication and increased fun. And the stage, despite its high stakes nature, is now teaching me to arrive as I am, a whole and flawed person, and to speak directly out of my experience and without artifice. I'm learning to experiment, to try new things, and to take risks I had never dreamed possible. Collaboration has been the gateway to a rich tapestry of musical experiences. In terms of acceptance, the more comfortable I become in my body, the more accepting I have become of my process and the process of each person around me. I'm increasing my capacity for compassion. I didn't realize compassion would be the outcome. I didn't realize as I began this work that I was lacking in compassion for my own story and therefore for others. But it has become self-evident as I become more grounded. I'm also learning to trust that life isn't only scary and uncomfortable. There's so much more than that, and it can be many things simultaneously, richly layered in joy and challenge. I actually keep a daily checklist, and among other things, it reminds me to laugh and be grateful. Finally, the constant learner I was thinking about Mukherjee again from the Song of the Cell and how he talks about the constant gardener of our synaptic function. But I'm thinking about the constant learner, the constant learning of our lives. And if we're lucky, we experience many chapters of learning in our lives. My body is always teaching me through its actions, its struggles, and its superpowers. When I listen to my body the way I listen to singers, I hear so much going on. So many dreams and desires, so many fears and questions. In one body, we are all teachers and we are all learners, all throughout our lives. This final song from Beethoven's Ungefähre Geliebte features one of my favorite melodies of all time. Here it is.
Was geschieden uns so weit und ein liebend Herz erreichet, was ein liebend Herz geweiht. Und ein liebend Herz erreichet, was ein liebend Herz geweiht. Dann vor diesen Liedern weichet, was geschieden uns so weit. Und ein liebend Herz erreichet, was ein liebend Herz geweiht. Was ein liebend Herz
you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Erica, for such great insights on like how music can be used to build healthy connections, and for showing us like really the healing power behind music, and of course the clips. They're just heaven to my ears. And we will head into Q&A time. Let me just check if there are any questions in the chat. Yes. Nothing here yet. However, I have a question myself. I was just wondering, for someone, we have quite a few people here, and for someone who maybe doesn't have a music background but wants to get kickstarted on that journey with music to improve their well-being, their overall health, do you have any tips for someone that may be looking into that?
I mean, I think that singing in a chorus is like the best thing, a community chorus. Oh, I hope that I just got a warning from my earbuds that they're dying. Can you still hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Oh, I can hear you on one side. Great. So yeah, I think joining a chorus is one of the best things that you can do, whether that's through a church or a community ensemble, because it doesn't require that you learn to play an instrument, which takes time and practice, but everyone can sing. So that's a great place to start. Or just singing at home along with friends is better than without, with a couple of people, the songs that you love. It's a great thing to do after a meal together.
Can I just add one thing too, as the next partnership with BC Brain Wellness and Music on Main, if you've never sung in a choir before and you've always been curious, on October 20th, we're holding an in-person intergenerational song sharing event with Cynthia Friesen and myself downtown. So in case you've never tried, it's totally low stakes, one time only. You can show up and try it.
Thank you so much. Great. And let me just make sure there's any other questions. Oh, yes, we have someone.
Hi,
I have a question for Gracie. So
I know
Gracie. Awesome. Yeah, Erica, thank you so much for the beautiful talk. You mentioned that your ideal collaborative partnership is smoothing for your nervous system, calms your brain. I was wondering how you balance that with the excitement or high emotions of performance.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on in performance. I have to say, first of all, that you'll need to hear Gracie play the piano because she's fantastic. But you're right, of course, Gracie, that there is a balance, and that we don't want to be so calm that we're under energized when we're playing. But I guess what I mean when I say that is that I find focus in the music making so that the energy gets channeled in a way that's useful. So things are still running pretty hot when I'm on stage. I'm not going to lie. It's not like lying on the beach, but the energy is high, but it's kind of contained and narrowed and focused towards a goal. And so that's what I find so soothing. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Let me just check if there's any other lingering questions.
Looks like there's a question about if there's a negative kind of music. I mean, I think maybe that's a different answer for each person, and the thing that brings one person joy and they find soothing is maybe not the same for the next person. So I think, if our body will let us know if it's helpful or not, and if it's creating stress, then our body will let us know that as well. But I don't think so. I mean, honestly, I think it's the variety that's so meaningful. I will say I've been listening to the top 500 albums of all time as listed by Rolling Stone magazine when I go to the gym. I'm working my way backwards from 500, and I'm now at 326. And that between 500 and 326, there have been a couple of albums that I found negative in the sense that there were so many curse words that I felt uncomfortable. But that's just me. For me, that was kind of a bit of an off-putting experience as a listener. But That's just, my personal opinion.
Right. Thank you. There's another question from Cass. Any work around for someone with moderate hearing loss?
Man, yeah. I feel like a doctor needs to answer that properly, but I do know that there are performing artists who have hearing loss, and there are, tactile tools for feeling sound that can be really helpful. So there's like a percussionist who's quite famous, and she performs barefoot so that she can really feel the vibrations of the instruments in the floor. I know that I've seen videos in Germany of bringing those with hearing loss. They hold like a balloon or something that is inflated so that they can feel the sound in their hands as it passes through the space. So that can be really wonderful. And then I'm sure that there's, if it's moderate hearing loss, I know like that I know someone who has, in the hearing aid, there's like a Bluetooth connection that allows him to hear things more directly, like from recordings. So it goes straight from his phone into the hearing assistant. So that is another tool I've heard about.
Right. Thank you so much. All right, since it is 1:29, this will be the official end to the event, everyone. Thank you so much, Erika, for sharing your expertise with us, and all of you for joining us today. I hope you were all able to learn something new today. Just a reminder, yes, we will be hosting an in-person collaboration on October 20th with Music on Main. So please join us then. We would love to see you folks. And also, next month we will be hosting a hybrid research seminar dedicated to understanding the cycle of sleep, stress, and cognitive health. Registration for both these is live on our events page, so I will just paste it in the chat again, so you can register there. And yeah, so I don't think there's anything else, and we'll just end it here. Thank you so much for joining, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everybody. Brilliant.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Thanks so much.